Hello. I see that I am currently alone in this room, and that is totally okay. We're just going to jump right into it and go live. Before I wanted to get started, I just wanted to put a brief notice out there and let nurses know, or whoever is on my pages know. I was made aware that there are some commenters or spammers, possibly scammers, putting some information into comments on some of the videos I did about the NCLEX review. I just want you to be very careful about people who are promising to have you contact them through WhatsApp. Anytime you hear someone trying to give you a foreign number or even what appears to be a local number with a WhatsApp link that they'll help you pass immediately, or the comments are they don't kind of go with the topic of discussion, although these did. These were all kind of talking about somebody like Miss Sophia or Miss Angie or something like that, and I was getting a ton of comments on one post that were not in they didn't line up with the fact that I'm relatively new on as a channel, and I don't get 30 comments hours after a video goes live, and I've only had 18 views. So that was kind of interesting. Um, I did check into it. Apparently, this is a scam that a lot of people are seeing. And you just got to be really careful. When I looked at analytics, all of those comments were from people based out of Nigeria. That tells me that they don't work for the boards in writing questions. They're not even based out of here. I'm not gonna make the bold statement or say anything about that Nigeria means they're scammers, because that's not always the case. It just means that you need to be very careful about who you line yourself up with on these kind of platforms and who you give your money to. So don't be mistaken. The only way to get past the boards, the NCLEX boards, is hard work. Like, it's going to take some dedicated study time, a good plan of managing your time, and if you try, you're going to do it. Just put in the work. Schedule your time out. Get a study group if you have to, or study by yourself, but give yourself some time each day for at least 3 to 4 weeks before you take the boards. Study anywhere from 50 to 75 questions every day and cover the content that the NCSBN, is that what it is? Oh my gosh, I always mess that one up. They have a packet on all the topics of the areas that are going to be covered on the boards. So what you want to do is make sure you familiarize yourself with those core areas that they're going to be looking for you to study. So you can do this. So I'm not going to get into the boards too much tonight. I wanted to jump right into some other topics. I was actually looking at some questions I had from new nurses about what their greatest fears are going into the emergency department. And just so you know, one of the things and trends that's happening that wasn't really even happening, say, 5 years or 10 years ago and beyond, is new grads are going into the emergency department. We're talking no experience, straight out of school, getting into an ER. Some of the prestigious schools have, or, that are lined up with academic medicine programs, like the UC system here in San Diego and some of the really big hospitals. They have dedicated programs that nurses go through, and it's an application process and a vetting process, and you have to have a lot of support in order to get in there, as far as letters of recommendation and things of that nature. You also have to have been a really good student. They do want your transcripts at those kind of places because it's competitive. So, that being said, knowing that there are some colleges, not colleges, hospitals out there that are community hospitals, that because when you live in densely populated areas and there are big hospitals or all in one area, and then you have all these outlying community hospitals, the smaller hospitals are taking new grads in without structured programs. They're hiring people in, like myself, to commit to precepting new grads and teaching students when they come and do rounds at the schools. I keep saying schools, hospitals, 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 hospitals. Sure would be easier if it was schools. Anyway, because some of the smaller community ERs are less structured, I don't know what kind of preceptorship you're gonna have. I don't know if you're gonna have a lot of class time. I think it depends on where you're at the time, but don't be discouraged. There are some amazing mentors and instruction I'm tripping on my words tonight, instructors out there, and you'll get through it. Trust me, you'll get through it. But anyway, what I was getting back to, full circle. Some of the questions I get and what new nurses are most afraid of, and not just new nurses, floor nurses, nurses who haven't had a lot of experience running codes. Codes seem to scare the living tar out of people. And I get that. When I was a new grad, I remember I would drive to work each night and I had about 45 minutes in the car each way. I would pray on the way that nobody would code on my way to work. And inevitably, because I worked in a high acuity surgical ICU, somebody always did code. And I got real I got seasoned really quickly on codes, and before I knew it, I was driving to work not worried about codes at all. It was just kind of like hoping that everybody survived and the night would go well, and, you just kinda get to a point too when you're going into work that you don't worry about those kind of things anymore because you get more comfortable with it, and like anything, it's a skill. It's a skill on how to get comfortable with it, and I don't want to sound like I'm being calloused in any way. Codes are not something that you're to be desensitized with, but this is your job, and your job does require that you are going to be there, and you're going to be competent and skilled enough to help execute the skills that are needed, and be part of an integral team when a code is happening. Now, there are places where codes are not don't happen as often. If you work in a small hospital and you have a skilled step down type of transitional care unit, you'll get codes because there'll be codes there, but there's a lot of patients that have DNRs and that kind of stuff. Which let me just touch on DNRs real quick. DNRs are something that I don't we're going to go all the way back codes. No matter where you are at, always ask whoever you have first contact with, if you're in the ER and you've got paramedics coming in, does the patient have a DNR? Because you do want to be honoring those requests as soon as you know the information. Now, if there is a DNR and nobody has the paperwork with them and nobody has taken it in the ambulance or the family hasn't found it, the code is going to resume until someone can find it. It's going to continue either until someone finds paperwork telling us not to do anything otherwise, or someone, a doctor, after running a code for a very, whatever period of time that is deemed necessary, gets to the point where we've exhausted as many rounds as we could doing the code, and it does not look like the person will regain meaningful life after the code is finished. So there are decisions that the doctors can make to stop a code, but in the beginning of it, you want to make sure you have a paperwork that delineates whether they want a chemical code, whether they want intubation and mechanical ventilation, what kind of support measures do they want, and how far do they want you to go? Just having a real firm respect of what that means. That also means that if you're in charge of any patients anywhere in the hospital, one of the first things you do besides assessing your patient and getting a report is find out immediately, does this patient have an advance directive or a DNR or any kind of paperwork that tells you what you can and can't do should the emergency arise? 9 times out of 10, if you don't have that paperwork, you're gonna need it, or you're gonna be put into a situation where you're gonna need it, and that is never a pleasant experience. And you can't be making phone calls trying to find out if there is paperwork in the heat of the moment. It's so important to have paperwork, advanced directive paperwork at the front of your documentation, on the computer, wherever it is in your system, your hospital system, to tell you what to do next. You should know that status of your patient when you accept the assignment. Now, if you're working in a unit where you don't see a lot of codes, or you you are relatively new to the practice of nursing and you haven't seen a lot of codes yet, here's what I have to say. Don't be afraid. I know that probably sounds like a tall order, but I mean it. If you are worried about codes, I want to tell you right now, there is nothing to be afraid of. Try to remember this. If you are presented with a patient who just so happens to be going into cardiac arrest or respiratory arrest, they are already in a state of bad. I can't say the D word on YouTube, apparently. They're already in a state which has put them near death. Now, what you can do for them, no matter what task you do for them at that point, you're only going to be improving upon the status at that moment. So, anything you can do to help them or resuscitate them, it's all brownie points at this point, because once a patient's gone down that pathway, everything you do from that moment on is helpful. Okay? Even if you're just bagging the patient. So I want to just remind yourself that the patient is already in that status, which doesn't support life. And anything you do is only going to improve upon the status that they're currently in. So it takes a little of the pressure off. Yeah, we want to try our best. We want to try to do everything we can to resuscitate someone that needs to be resuscitated. But just know that they're already in a position, and we want to do whatever we can to improve upon that. My earbuds are stopping at this moment, so I'm going to pop them out because something is going on, and it sounds like they're turning off. So let me just pop these out real quick. Okay. Getting back to where we were. I'm just going to recap that real quick so I can start if I need to clip this video for later. Anything you do for a patient that has gone into a cardiopulmonary or cardiorespiratory arrest, you're only going to be improving upon their status. So try to remember that anything you do for them is going to be beneficial. Don't forget to make that call for help, hit the button, activate the code, start with those things. Now, my other part to this is I don't care where you work in the hospital. Even if the hospital does not require you to take BLS, PALS, ACLS, all of that, I want you to, at minimum, please try to consider taking BLS and ACLS. It is so important that anyone in the hospital system be trained, because even if you think you've got a rapid response team that's going to come and bail you out, or you've got ER or ICU nurses that are going to come down and help or take over, you should know what to do early on. And if it's your patient and you're going to stick around, it would be really nice if you can continue to assist in any way possible if you want to step back and you don't want to be leading that code. So I feel like it's important for everyone to be certified and understand what the drugs are all about, what the rates of compressions are, how to bag, learn all the stuff you can, because learning is power. And when you're empowered to just basically have the knowledge, no, it doesn't mean you're experienced in running a code, but it does mean that you have the knowledge and power to help your patient out in a pickle. And you can also continue to help and learn as you continue forward with your patient, assisting in that code as it's going on. So that's just my little thing on that. If you are being asked to go to a code and you don't know the first thing about codes, again, that's okay. Go anyway, because I guarantee you will learn something while you're there. Volunteer. Like I said in my last video about volunteering to float to the ER, volunteer to go to where the code is and take a deep breath right before you walk in that room, and don't forget to breathe while you're doing a code on someone else. I see so many nurses holding their breath the whole time and they're so tensed up. And I probably was that way too a long time ago, but you really need to breathe, take care of yourself. And when you go in there, just remember, you can be a help. There are so many things going on in a code that even if you just make yourself the documenter, that is vitally important. You're just the documentation nurse. 2 things that you can do in a code, even if you don't know jack diddly, is you can document and you can bag a patient. You can also run and get supplies as needed. Just be there to have all hands on deck. You can pull labs, you can start a new IV line. There are a lot of tasks that have to happen during a code blue, and it's always helpful to have more people available there to try to assist with the code. I always tell nurses too, if you don't know what to do, you get up there and you be the bagger. You can bag patients all day long and just stand in that one spot, and your only job is to hold that ambu bag and help the patient breathe, okay? So if you don't know what to do, take on just bagging the patient or just being the documenter. A lot of times the charge nurses, not charge nurses, but house supervisors will come down. They'll want to be the documenters and let them have that job. Just bag the patients. Run the stuff to the labs if need be. Just be an extra set of hands and make yourself useful. You're going to learn something every time. Don't stress about it. There's a team environment. And I'll say this probably every video, you're going to hear me say this. The hospitals, especially the ER, anytime there's a code, it's a team environment. Without the team, it doesn't get done. It takes at least 2 to 3 people to run a code at bare minimum. Somebody's got to intubate, somebody's got to do airway, somebody's got to do compressions, and then you're going to need someone pushing drugs. And that's just the skeleton crew. So there's anytime you can help, it's important. But it's a team environment. It's always a team environment. And this whole thought process of nurses eating their young and all that crap that we heard years ago, the culture is changing. I'm hoping that I am doing something to change it. I know that by going and doing what I'm doing now with precepting new grads and working with people who aren't confident in their skills, that I can give what I have within me to be patient and calm and kind and encouraging to those who are coming up in the practice. I mean, let's admit it. The pandemic was a complete shit show. And I'm sorry, yes, I do curse on this, so you may want to put your earbuds in if you have some kids around. The pandemic was a shit show. And anyone who came out of the nursing school or was new at the time of the pandemic, oh my God, they came out at a time where there were so many shifting of staff moving around. I don't know maybe 1 or 2. I don't know many nurses who are still in the jobs they were in before the pandemic broke out. There was a lot of moving and shaking and changing of positions and going to minimum staffing and getting, being put onto another department's cost code and moving from this one to this one. Or they were working in surgery and surgery closed down. So now they're doing floor, or floor people were being put on skeleton crew because we didn't get the admissions right away that we thought we were going to get. And then things were nuts. So there's been a lot of moving and shaking going on throughout the pandemic. And with that, there was a whole bunch of nurses who did not get the hands-on, person-to-person, face-to-face with their instructors during their last semesters. A lot of nurses were strictly going to school and they were online, and that was it. There was no clinicals. So they came out of school, they got wooed into doing crisis contracts, which we're not even going to tackle that today because that was a whole mess in itself. So nurses were being thrown out there into the field. They had no experience. They had no mentors because nobody had time for that when things got crazy. And then immediately within a couple months, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, every social media platform out there was inundated with everybody talking about how they hate nursing. They're leaving the practice. They don't know why they went into it in the first place. Nurses were having full-on breakdowns on camera and broadcasting it to the world. And it's unfortunate. And I just think that we have to do some rewinding. We can't rewind and change what we did. We just have to do some mitigation of damage here and try to encourage nurses to come back to the practice, because I think the last count I heard just in the state of California, I think we're down like 265,000 nurses in shortage right now. So We're going to be taking new nurses into the ER, into the ICUs, into high acuity units with training. That's the only way I will agree to do it, is that if we're bringing new grads into where I'm working, then it has to be training and preceptorship, mentorship, and side by side working. So back to what I was saying about the whole team thing. If the team doesn't exist and we don't come around and build a community around one another over these next, say, 5 critical years, I'm calling this the first 5 past pandemic. If we do not start doing better and changing how we deal with new grads and inexperienced nurses and encouraging them to come back to the practice or to give it a chance to work in the practice with mentorship and leadership that is not throwing them to the wolves, so to speak. I mean, that does not, don't get me wrong. I don't want to hear later somebody getting me wrong. I do not mean hand holding. I do not mean coddling. I do not mean any of that nonsense either, because I do believe that you have to have a certain amount of confidence and the ability to be autonomous and responsible and understand critical thinking in order to be a nurse. I think that there has to be some accountability for if someone isn't practicing up to a certain standard, that they are assisted and given opportunity to be trained and reintegrated into clinical care. So, I just think that we all are gonna have to do a lot of work, and I did not think I would be 20 some odd years into nursing thinking I would want to be doing this. I thought that eventually I would be doing something similar to this, and I've done it in the past, but not to the level of passion I have about it right now. I have so much passion in my heart about this because I spent a lot of time during the pandemic and post pandemic thinking, we're screwed. Like, how are we going to fix this? How are they going to fix this? And I was saying things like they, and who the hell is they? Like, is there some like nurse god up in the sky that's going to wave their wand and come up with a plan? I don't think so. It takes individuals one by one asking themselves, asking you if you are a nurse, what can you do to make this better? There is a massive shortage of nurses. There is need all over the place. We don't have the nurses being cranked out of school that we need to fill the deficit that we're in right now. And that is only going to get continually compounded over the next several years. And we could be in a much more we could be in a much worse situation come 5 years, come 10 years. And God forbid, if any other kind of health crisis happens or pandemic of any nature were to break out, game over. I mean, we're just looking like jackals on the world stage, and we are a first world country, and we should not be practicing like we don't have resources. So it starts with us. And I know for me personally, I'm vested in being the change, and I hope that you are too. It's hard to do that sometimes mentally, to think about being that person that's going to be the change because we're tired. We're exhausted. We've got our own patients, our own shifts, and our own lives. And it doesn't mean, but I'm not saying that the hospital situations and the lack of staffing and all the things that go with it are getting better. Right now, things are tough out there, and we're heading into, flu season or seasonal depression, as we call it, because a lot of the people who get sick typically get a lot sicker during the fall and winter months. So it's going to be an interesting 4, 5, 6 months coming up. So I hope that, everybody stays safe and healthy out there. I just ask that if you haven't considered being the change and asking yourself what you can do to support nurses in the coming years and even in the immediate now, that you join me. I hope that you will join me and thinking about being the change for this, because we've got to change some things in order for it to get better. And we've got to stop doing the nonsense that was done in Tennessee and persecuting nurses for medical errors. I get it. That whole situation is very unique. I'm not saying that bothered me. That, that Rondavant thing really pissed me off because it just kind of went against what we talk about in reporting errors and everything else. So I have a concern about the fact that a lot of people aren't going to be reporting their errors and doing that honorably. And I can see where it's a problem at this point because nurses are scared. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get political in there with my little jab, left hook, whatever I was giving it. But I do think that that is not helping the practice. I know a lot of nurses who said that after that, they don't even want to think about going into nursing, which is very, very sad. Because if there's one thing that we need to do we need in our society is we will always, always, always need nurses. You will always need doctors. You will always need healthcare providers. You will always need ancillary support services. You will need respiratory therapists. You will need radiologists. You're going to need phlebotomists. You will always need housekeepers and, environmental services and sterile processing. And I mean, I could go on and on and on because without them, we wouldn't be able to function as individuals. But my point is that those jobs and the need for them is so great that, we have to really start looking at what we can do to make it better and how we can support it moving forward. And if you have a concern of something that you see happening in your area that you're working in that you feel like is getting overlooked, and you don't know, if you don't feel like you have the support to talk to your supervisors about it. And this is for housekeeping all the way down to groundskeepers and, bed control, everything. We can't always fix everything overnight, but coming into places like this YouTube channel, Grassroots RN, and talking about things in live chats and in watching videos and having discussions, I think is important. I want everybody to feel like there are plenty of places for them to have sounding boards when it comes to issues of concern. And I definitely would love for this place to be your home. I'm just a small little weeby baby, YouTube channel, and I've got zeros on my chat right now. Nobody's here, and that's okay. I don't need everybody to be here with me right now. I'm just straight up riffing, and I want to just talk about what I want to talk about since nobody's asking me questions. I have a feeling within a couple months, we're going to have loads of people in here and we're going to be able to bounce ideas off each other and we're just going to keep pressing on. So I am going to keep coming back, keep coming back, keep coming back, keep coming back. And I'm going to keep posting video. And again, I'm not posting crap content. I am going to keep posting on the topics that I know I'm passionate about, and I hope you are too. So far, it's looking like people want to hear some of the things that are topics I put out there. Might be in shorter form content or even in the long form videos and are missing the live streams. But I want to try to make this a well-rounded experience where people can come on the live stream or can check out the videos later or even get on shorts or whatever and just get a little boost of something that they needed to hear for that day. All of you are special. Everybody is needed. Everybody's important. And what you do right now matters. So don't feed into the lies of any of the nonsense that you hear about. Try to remember that if you've got garbage in, put the garbage out. If people are feeding you garbage into your ear, put it out, because you've got to start keeping positive information coming in, affirmations. No matter what it is, I want everybody to try to stay in a good headspace, because our mental health is one of our single biggest tools we have to continue pressing on in this career. And caring for your mental health is incredibly important. If you need to take time to do that, do it. And yeah. So I have talked now for almost 30 minutes. I don't know how I do that. And I'm literally just talking to a screen. So hopefully someone will see this. Maybe it'll speak to you. You're welcome to shoot me an email. I have my email at grassrootsrn@gmail.com. You can also find me over at Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, LinkedIn. I'm orbiting everywhere right now. So, but I'm going to keep coming back. So If you didn't see me this time, you'll catch me next time. And hopefully by next week, I'll have some more consistent time frames on when I'll be posting. But there may be some variations in that schedule based on my other jobs that I do. So I will try to get better about letting everybody know when I'm going to be on live. And I just can't wait to have some more conversations. So again, let me know what you want to hear, and I'm here for you. So have a great night, everybody. Yeah, and